Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. You know, it's hard to believe that inflation is still a thing, but boy, it sure is. And that's exactly why Mint Mobile still gives you premium wireless for just $15 a month. Well, it's also because we have that offer printed on, like, 1 million t-shirts, but it's mostly the inflation thing. So give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Okay guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This one's a really interesting one, following on from a TikTok video that I did a few last week for the previous episode, the Fugazi one. It basically, I thought, art of rock and roll, you know, we all enjoy the music within the packages now, and it's more so we're enjoying it in a digital world and in a more sort of esoteric way, don't we? We sort of take it in almost intravenously and don't think about the product wrapped around it. Whereas in the old days, and I am one of those people from the old days, way back in, you know, when the dinosaurs ruled the earth, you basically bought your records or your cassettes or your Super 8, not Super 8, so your 8-track, you know, or your reel-to-reel, whatever way you bought them. Hang on. Even as far back as wax cylinders, when you bought them, it came in a package, all right? And the package, now, first sort of part of the century of music, music was quite sort of, it was just wrapped in paper, plain paper, package sleeves, because you went to buy the music that was inside the package, and most of the time it was sort of cheap and shipped out to make as much of the dollar as they could, and it was usually sort of sold in its local markets, so not necessary for anything, you know, graphically wise. And then, you know, occasional art picture sleeves, of course, but rock and roll is where it really took off, and with the sort of the abundance of Elvis Presley and you know, all those sort of rock and rollers, the Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock in the UK, and skiffle music and things where you would then start to sell the music instead of to a man with a moustache and a pipe and rimmed horn glasses sitting back in his wingback chair listening to his Brahms. You were suddenly selling this music to a generation that, you know, as of the advent of On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando, suddenly the teenager arrived. And when the teenager arrived, you had to try and draw that teenager's pounds, dollars, rubles, cents, lira, whatever, from them in a way that, you know, quickly, because they were quite cluey. And if the product was inside the package was rubbish and they had to listen to it first, they probably weren't going to buy it. But as most people of that age, you know, your 12-year-olds to your 16-year-olds, they're driven by their pockets, right? And so by their visuals, sorry, their eyes. So you're buying product, like they say, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover. Not the same with music. Music is, you very much are drawn to the cover first, and I think the teenagers were that first people aimed at. So you have these, you know, these great, beautiful, monochrome single covers furblings that Elvis within, that are covered in a nice sort of a clear sort of acetate that over time is yellowed. And if you look at your copies of, say, the Beatles' "Please Please Me" or "I Want to Hold Your Hand" or any of the early singles, any of that's the "Rock Around the Clock," as I mentioned, "Good Golly Miss Molly," all that sort of stuff, you're gonna get that lovely little sort of yellowing hue on it, and that's the I don't know what it is. I think it's acetate, but I'm not sure. So anyway, whatever they've used on there has aged with its time and gone a slightly yellow hue, and I love that, on its sort of a patina. Anyway, you've got those teenagers buying their art and buying the singles because of the art, and it sort of, it always will be and always has been that case until recently, of course, because you had as I said, you have from the black and white monochrome splashes of colour of rock and roll to the garish pop culture colours of the 60s, into the monochromal sort of angular brutalism of punk, and then through from there to the sort of electro modern age of pop, and then there sort of it dies really from there because single sales no longer really existed, and so people weren't buying them by visuals so much in the 90s, particularly late 90s. I mean, you can get cassette singles and CD singles, but they weren't the same. Now, again, I've bemoaned about this on this program before. You're probably going to say, "Oh, broken record, stuck record tone," but it is the case. The reason that vinyl sort of is brilliant for music and rock and roll is the fact that it takes more room up to store it up, but you get more than just what you buy audibly. You have the packaging, and a lot of the times these days now, with all the hipsters that have come out, they're bringing music back to the masses. Vinyl, there's lots of weird and wacky covers that were always the case anyway in the 60s and 70s and early 80s. So it's just coming back again. But you sat down with your record and you had the music on the record player and you looked at the art. And the art, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of us have put art on, and I've got a few. I know they say that's pretentious wankiness, but it's not the case. It's just because I love the art itself on my wall in some picture frames, because I genuinely love the art itself. Not because it's the record, it's just the art of the record. But you had all that, you could hold it and look at it. And the art was really important. And, we've all been there. We've all bought records where we thought, wow, this art's amazing, and you've put it on and it's an absolute pile of poo. And conversely, you've sort of been put off a record by its cover, and then you come along in the future and you've downloaded it or streamed it and gone, damn, I wish I'd bought a hard copy of that one, right? But it all, and there's where, I think we of the modern era, the modern teenagers are losing out. I think, they're losing out on the fact that they can go and grab, conversely cheaply. They can't at the moment, not at the moment. When pressing plants get large again, they will come along and they will be cheaper to manufacture. But there are things in our lives. Everyone listen to this program, most of you are around my age. It says to my audience stats say that most of you around my age, maybe a little bit younger, 30 to 50. Everyone has a moment, an piece of art that's music related, that it means so much to them. It's so emotive. I was asking people, my friend Millsy, if you're listening, Millsy, thanks for responding to the post. He came out with his favourite one is the Scorpions, album, the one with the lady sitting down and with her breast out, and the man with the chewing gum coming from one naked breast to his hand stretched out. Quite a provocative album, the Scorpions' Love Drive. Now, that was banned in America, that cover. And on the back, it's got the same lady with a boob completely uncovered, and no chewing gum. And it was replaced by this dull sort of black cover with a silver scorpion on the front. And he loves it, and it's really striking and significant and alluring. And I think in a sort of weird way. I mean, I'm going to tell you. I mean, I'm not saying that I find it does feel a bit creepy, but that is how I think it's meant to be. And that's another thing about the wonderful thing about music art, isn't it? So much of it has been banned. So much of it has been altered and changed from market to market because, and we'll talk about that later on with my choices, because they find it, certain markets find it difficult to, digest, or they find it difficult to sell, or or radio stations won't press it. I mean, the Scorpions one, interestingly enough, the reason why it wouldn't fly in America is because of the they've got quite a lot of puritanic states over there. High America, and you do have quite religious states, and that's fine. It's each to their own. If you deeply believe that offends you, then that happens. And so they want to sell records. So instead of producing two covers for two different parts of the country, they just re-release it with one cover. But it does, like the music within the side of the record, it's so emotive, isn't it? The images in your mind, like for me, Forever and a Day. And it is part of one of my favourite. There is one of my favourite single covers, and I'm going to bring it up in my list. But I'll say it's sort of like there's a couple there that really just stick to you and say, "Wow, that's so the time, so the moment." And also not just that, but the people that were, either gave it to you, where you bought it from, when you bought it, who was listening to it with you, And so we there is some, and not just that, but also the people that create the art are just incredibly creative, intelligent people. Like the artist that did the Scorpions album is Storm Thorgerson. Now Storm Thorgerson has done, I believe he's done, Pink Floyd album covers. His studio, Hypnosis, has done so much incredible work that you would, if you, I'll put a link to his Wikipedia page, but you go and look at the work he's done, and it's pretty out there and different. It goes from that sort of crazy heavy metal sort of lurid is it wrong word? Lurid covers of the Scorpions to the beauty and finesse of Pink Floyd. So it's quite wonderful. It's like, as I mentioned last week with the Fugazi cover, Mark Wilkinson. He does things like that. With the drug-fueled images of Fugazi to the sort of storming eddies of this world. And the Judas Priest covers. It's just it's wonderful up and downness of rock and roll covers, and the art of rock and roll. And this, to be honest, we also love it because we wear it on t-shirts, we put it on posters. There are record covers out there that as soon as you mention the band, that's the cover you think. Like you said the Sex Pistols, you don't think of Who Killed Bambi or anything else. You think of the one thing, you think of. And you don't even think of God Save the Queen, do you? With the nose, the safety pin through the nose, you think, never mind the bollocks. Yellow, pink, stark, pop-related, no nonsenseness, right? Pop art, not pop art, punky, no nonsenseness of the cover, because it wasn't about art; it was about the music within. And I do believe in an interview that John Lydon didn't want a cover at all. In fact, he wanted just a black plain cover. He didn't want any art whatsoever because he didn't want it to be influencing the people listening to the music, which is really very much the thing then, right? But then you also, you think of the Beatles, and as soon as you think of the Beatles, everyone goes to Sgt. Pepper. Everyone. I mean, I personally would go to Rubber Soul, but that's because it's a beautiful piece of it's just a wonderful album cover. Whereas everyone goes to the Peter Blake Peppers because of it's that moment, it's that art point. It's like when you say Joy Division, you're going to go straight to the black cover with the sound waves on, right? You know, when you say I don't know, say Jimi Hendrix, you're going to go straight to Electric Ladyland, you know. And I'm not even going to mention that cover. People know what that cover is, and there's several controversial covers for that one, but everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? Now, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's those times in your mind, right? It's like the 90s. If you think about the 90s, the album that sticks out the most in the mind of the 90s for me is What's the Story Morning Glory by the Oasis. If I'm going to talk about mass-produced albums, not metal albums or underground albums, but albums that are there on the shelves and you walk into the store and you see it off first time, that is the one that grabs you. You know, I was just talking to my lovely wife this morning about it. Like when I was a teenager, I remember walking to Smiths in Brent Cross in North London, and they had an Arcadia poster up on the wall, and that happens to be my wife's favourite album cover. So the Red Rose, which is the album, and she's got that sort of really beautiful pen, looks like pen and ink drawing of a woman's face with a red lipstick and the red rose, and very almost a time of its own. And I do remember seeing that on the wall and wondering what it was. I remember saying to my brother, "What's that?" And he said, "Oh, that's the band that used to be Duran Duran." It sticks in my head. I don't know the album that well. My wife loves it. I'm not sure I could name you a song on it, but that's okay. It's neither here nor there. It's, you know, each decade has its memorable album. You know, Dark Side of the Moon, right? You know, absolutely memorable. Everyone would know that album cover. I said, Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols. You know, as I mentioned, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper. Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys, you know, the White Album, Metallica's Black Album, Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. You know, it's just, it's, what, you know, Deep Purple's Made in Rock, not Made in Rock, oh my God. Hang on one second. In Rock it is, isn't it? Deep Purple in Rock. In Rock, of course, this is what happens when you go without notes this week. I thought I'm just going to go for a nice long little diatribe. I have things in my head I want to say, and I didn't write In Rock down. I don't know why I thought something else, but anyway, it's Deep Purple in Rock, of course, with the Mount Rushmore heads, with the faces of the band. Everyone knows it, right? Everyone knows it. You may not know the tracks in the album, but you know it, right? And they are great pieces of art in their own right. You know, all of the wonderful Yes album covers, you know, all that wonderful, beautiful, sort of romantic, soft, science fiction based, fantasy sort of driven artwork by Roger Dean, you know, who's gone on to do quite a lot of stuff. He doesn't just do sort of Yes and stuff out covers like that, but he just does this wonderful sort of futuristic floating islands, you know, just in the sky, sort of weird creatures. It's just wonderful. I think very much copied by bands like Praying Mantis. They did a very similar kind of artwork, and I don't even know. I don't think Roger Dean did Praying Mantis, but it has that kind of feel. Anyone knows of Praying Mantis, the band? I'm just having a look now at his thing, just double checking. He did Uriah Heep, Asia, Budgie, Gentle Giant. He did the wonderful cover of one of my favourite albums of all time, which is actually on my list of top albums, and that's Anderson, Buford, Wakeman and Howe. It was when they couldn't be called Yes. He's also friends with designer Storm Thorgerson of Hypnosis. There you go. You see, he did the brilliant Close to the Edge cover work. He also did, I believe he did Tales from a Topographic Ocean. Just a brilliant. Other album covers that stand out to me are the Peter Gabriel Gracelands cover. Which is very iconic for its time, and also for me a part of my life. That album is one of my favorite albums of all time, and I will play that at least once or twice a year. I don't go out all the time, but I do play it. I go through a mode where I want to play it. Very much like similar in some respects to the art of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. You know, their first album has that kind of 90s, that sort of 80s impact. You know, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. It's actually they reissued it recently, and it's quite a striking cover. I don't again think it's one of the most amazing albums I've ever heard. It's pretty there for the moment of the time, but it is a cracking album cover. Again, sort of that sort of Dali pop art sort of Matisse kind of image, you know, sort of painting on the front. It is quite a striking album. It's bold, it's colourful, it's got lots of movement. It's very Picasso-esque. It's very, you know, it belies the fantasy pop music lying within. So, you know, looking at the cover, you think this is like XTC would do very similar covers. And in fact, one of those albums is my top 5 as well. Top list of favourite album covers, and I'll get to those in the second half. I won't give any spoilers away. But bold colours like that, they just draw you in, don't they? Again, it's the peacock thing. Oh my god, I wonder what's inside that package. How fun is that? And it was that time, wasn't it? It was the post-disco electro pop time when, you know, everything was synth driven and big wacky hairdos and hangovers from glam and punk, and, you know, huge shoulder pads and tiny waists and big bright bold colours, which, you know, to be honest, I sort of miss, because we've gone a bit bland now, haven't we, in our art for our music. We have. I mean, I can't remember. Well, firstly, I haven't gone looking at new art for ages, because you can't just walk into a record store and there it is anymore. It's not easily accessible to flick through. But when you do find it, it's really very much like the music that's within its packaging. It's really one-dimensional and dull. I can't imagine anyone frothing, you know, in 20 odd years' time to anything by Ed Sheeran, any cover art by Ed Sheeran, to be honest with you, or anything, or any of them, or any of the sort of, you know, pop bland masses that, you know, belie our music charts, if there are music charts. You know what I mean? Any of those sort of really dull, because, you know, the fun police have taken away the fun, haven't they? So what I do like, though, is that you can be subversive still and go into a record shop and you can find stuff that's wacky and outrageous and different. But I was watching a YouTube video of a guy that owns a record shop in North London, and he has this, I think it's 2-pack, I'm not sure, but the whole record folds out to a life-size poster of the rapper. And that is just brilliant. You know, completely and utterly useless to you. In that respect, you can't put it anywhere. But knowing it's there just makes you want to smile, doesn't it? You know, it's those sort of individual moments of madness that cost more to produce, but you don't care because it gets part of the art, right? It's part of the fun and the art of making records. You know, it really sort of... And that's again why the CD age killed off record art, because you didn't need it. It was such a small space you were looking at. You couldn't get it in there. You know, I mean, God forbid, trying to look at all the individual madness that's in Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. You know, I've mentioned that again. Listen to the shows. Go back to the beginning of my series, and you will find an episode on that. You know, the stuff that was in there. You know, the hundreds and hundreds of in-jokes and nods to the band's past and the future to come, and yet it's all gone. You can't see it on the CD. You need a magnifying glass. You know, I know that it's to me, it said, when CDs came around, what it said to me was, we don't need art. We don't need the art anymore. We're going back to this, you know, music as a comestible for for every day without any necessity to be part with it. You have to, with a record, like I said before, or a cassette, you've got to be with it. You've got to be at its side, its beck and call, because you've got to turn it over, or you've got to rewind it and fast forward it. You've got to flip the vinyl, you've got to clean it, you've got to look at it, you've got to care for it, and then you've got to look at enjoy the art that's with it. The CD-age was like, hey man, it's so interesting how the CD-age really did precursor to the MP3, because it was a definite obvious progression, to this sort of consumerist society we live in. I'm surprised that it didn't happen sooner, to be honest. But then again, like everything, people will get sick of how this stuff is consumed, and the lie that they gave us about CDs, about them being indestructible and live forever. I mean, I've got CDs that I've only had for maybe 10 years. I can never play them again, whereas I've got vinyl that are 60 years old I'm still playing. So, there's a bit of a lie there. We all got sold a bit of a con, I think, in that respect. It was great for transport, but even then the cassette was probably better anyway. You just had to look after it. Anyway, that's the rant. That's me ranting on about that. So that's enough for this side. I'm going to go and warm my tea up, and then we'll come back and we'll chat about my favourites and see if any of them are any of your favourites. Okay, bye for now.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do make everything about me.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
My passport is in the pocket of the duffel bag I took to Mexico.
At Mattress Firm, we know the right mattress matters. We also know that price does too. So if you see a lower price somewhere else, we'll match it. Plus, you get free and fast delivery. Shop in-store or online at mattressfirm.com. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
Welcome back, guys. This week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones, album art, and my favourite album art. So, before the break, we chatted about the sort of history of albums and artwork, and the sort of romance that we have with them, and the reactions and interactions we have with different packaging and different artwork types. Well, I thought, as I said before, this one part of the episode is going to be a sort of breakdown of some of my favourites. Now, of course, all lists are a movable feast. They can come and go. They can change from day to day, from moment to moment, from minute to minute, from hour to hour. And so I quickly what I did is I instead of spending ages thinking about it, I gave myself like 2 minutes to scrabble down quickly, in a few categories, what are my favourites, so that I would not overthink it, because I would then end up never doing the episode, because it'd be incredibly difficult to do so. So I've got each category. I've also got a subcategory and some honourable mentions. I won't be going deeply into the history of each of the album covers. I'm just going to give you my list of my favourites, a little brief why I like them, and move on. Okay, so we're going to start with going to start with the pop side of it, just to sort of get that bit out of the way. Now, I'm going to say that quickly off the bat, some of my favourite pop covers are they come from my childhood, from my teenage years, from an album that I play regularly every year as a sort of a comfort album for me, and that's Paul Simon's Gracelands. Gracelands is a really simple cover. If everyone has seen it, it's got that nice warm yellow, pale yellow background with the African art in the middle. And it's it's a classic album. It's been around a long time. It's got some brilliant singles of it. I mean, My Boy in the Bubble, You Can Call Me Al. These are absolute classics as songs, and I remember seeing them on Top of the Pops and being absolutely in awe of them, and rushing out and buying that one. At the same time, also the single for Sign of the Times by Prince. I bought that one as well because it had exactly the same kind of feel to me, and I loved the art on the single, and I remember buying them on the same day. So that's a quick mention, of course. And then outside of that, I think probably Michael Jackson's Thriller, and these are covers just because they are emotive to me. I think also Dire Straits, classic album with the guitar on the front there. The album I'm speaking of, I don't need to mention it, I'm sure. It's Brothers in Arms, right? Anyway, that one there, because that was one of the biggest selling albums of all time. When I bought that album, one in every 8 households in the UK had a copy of it on vinyl or cassette. Yeah, brilliant. Again, really simple, striking visuals on that album. Now, I mean, I could go on a lot more pop stuff as well, I won't, but that's as far as I'm going. Let's move into more of the stuff that I actually own and listen to more these days. And first we're going to start off with punk, right? So, and again, remember, these are not in order of how, 1 to 5. They just happen to be 5 quick off the top of my head with a couple of honourable mentions. Now, firstly, I'm talking about will be the Damned first album, Damned, which is a brilliant cover. It's so evocative. It was banned in a lot of places. I think in the US they tried to ban it, or they might have banned it. It has an alternative cover to it. It's got the band all sort of huddled together on a black stark background, covered in cake, looking like they're licking it off each other. Looks like they've had a lot of fun with a food fight. It can be evocative. It could be quite sexually sort of orientated, I suppose. But it just adds it shows the anarchicness of the Damned, the speed, the idiocy, the fun, and it is just a classic album with a classic cover. Let's be honest. And it's got New Rose on it. You can't ask for more, really. And then I follow it with Germ-Free Adolescence by X-Ray Specs. Now, I absolutely love this album. It's got the band on the front in day-glow clothing, trapped in test tubes, and when you flick the brown over the other side, you see the back of the band, and the test tubes are cracked. I'm not sure why they're broken on the back, but on the front they're not broken. And inside the inner sleeve, is printed on a cardboard background that looks like bubble wrap. It's got everything you want in punk. To me, it's probably the ultimate punk record that's not like the classics, right? It's one of those ones people forget, but it's a brilliant album. World Turned Day Glows on it. It's got the wonderful vocals of sadly now gone Polystyrene, brilliant brass sections, manic speed guitars, great dub rhythm guitars, attacking strange lyrics. I mean, just he tried to strangle me with my coloured beads, so I hit him in the head. All that sort of stuff. Just really brilliant, wacky stuff, and very feminist driven, which I really think is fantastic. One of my favourite covers. It's a really fun cover. And then we move into the more sort of a quick sidestep to something a bit more stark and as I mentioned before in the first half, a bit more brutalist, and that's Crass's Penis Envy. Now, all Crass's albums look like they've been photocopied just down the road by the band. Right? They fold out to a poster. They usually got they've got anti-war, anti-government slogans on them. They're all block printed, stenciled. You could spend hours reading a Crass cover. when it folds out. Then most of them are posters, and in fact most of mine I put on the walls, which I regret now because I've got like blue tack on them or tack marks, but I enjoyed them and I had them out there. This one's got a cover with it's a sex doll box, so you've got the cardboard box, the front of it, a clear cut out polythene heart with the sex doll's face behind it that says Teenage Dreams, I think it is, and it has the doll with the gaping mouth, the typical plastic ugly 70s unrealistic sex doll, right? 1 second, I've got the album behind me. And she says, amazing lifelike companion, teenage doll. There you go. That again is full of stark, angular, aggressive, non-tuneful, in my opinion. In a lot of the cases, they're not tunes you put them on to go and have a listen to, relax. This stuff is designed to be emotive. It is sort of the antithesis of what punk was and what it should be. It's not pop. It's not chart topping. It's angry. It's trying to change the world. It's like aggressive anarcho. It's basically like aggressive hippies, basically, if you imagine, all living in communes, vegans, angry with the government. In that time, it was a Cold War, so anti-nuclear movements, trying to get all the American missiles out of England, off of Greenham Common, and so on and so forth. And then we'll go from that sort of side of punk to the really beautiful dub-driven, almost skinhead album, The Ruts, by The Ruts, called The Crack. One of the greatest albums ever made, I reckon. If you have a good look at this one, you should try and find it. It's just a sort of a painting of it looks like a party, right? And in that painting, they're all in there. Gary Bushell, John Lydon, there's Glenn Matlock, there's Steve Jones, there's all sorts of members. I think there's members from Boomtown Rats. They're all on this cover. They're all in this party, and it's a kind of like a 1930s kind of Art Nouveau kind of style painting. It's beautiful. It generally actually does belie the album cover, because the albums have got this quite sort of sad, stark kind of, I don't know, angry but sort of teenage kind of album, very mature for its time, very very heavy dub influence in it. It's a brilliant album. And then of course I've got for my last one, I've got Killing Joke's first album, Killing Joke, which is just this gatefold, stark, angry. I don't know, not angry. It's sort of like, it looks like the Berlin Wall. It's like a really poor photocopy, a photocopy that's been photocopied like 20 times, of kids climbing over a wall with a spray painted the work named Killing Joke on it. It is really, once you see it's so the band. It's so ritualistic, dub, reggae, punk, neo. I mean, it's post-punk. It's everything that's brilliant about that sort of industrial sound that they created. But that album cover as well is really emotive to me, and I've had that for a very long time. And every now and again I get the album out just to look at the art when I'm playing it, and it really is the band. It's almost bordering crass type of nuance, but with a little bit more eye towards the apocalypse, I think. And I'm going to talk about on this particular category, I think let's talk about some honourable mentions. And I think Pill's, the first Pill album, that sort of brilliant rapping, that brilliant. It's not their first album, sorry, I apologise. I think it's the second album, isn't it? It's actually their fifth album, actually. I boo-booed there. First album was Public Image First Issue, which is another cracking album with John Lydon on the front. Then Metal Box Claws, which is a real brilliant piece of salesmanship. All the albums released in a metal tin can, like a film can. Really hard to get hold of. If you've got a copy of that, then brilliant. Other than there's Flowers of Romance, but honestly, and this is what you want, this is what you get. 1984, but album is my favourite because it's so pop art, it's so pure, it's so John Lydon in a package all together. It's probably the ultimate pure album in my opinion, and a brilliant live album of that as well, which is a great called Live, which I've got. Came out Record Store Day with the white album with the blue strip that just says album, and it's got Rise on it, and everyone loves Rise, right? And it's just so a moment of its time. And then of course you have mentioning things like a moment of the time. I think XTC's Drum and Wires with the really graphic, brightly coloured portrait that's got all with blocks of and angular triangles of green, blue and red, really striking. One of the first albums where the drums were mixed forward in the mix, much more forward than anything else. It was one of the first times it's ever done, and in a more mainstream album, even though Drums and Wires is not a mainstream album, it's again, it's got Making Plans for Nigel on it, brilliant. Helicopter, which is also brilliant as well. So we could talk about loads in that section, because punk really did create this sort of wonderful playground of colour and movement and style that was so diverse. You had the Slits first album, where they're all, which I've got, which is a quite very rare copy now, where they're the band on the front in tribal gear, topless, with mud, covering their breasts, so they're not really topless, but they are, sort of thing. So that was really quite an eye-opening cover when it came out. So it had all these really strange, wonderful, diverse things. We all know about Nevermind the Bollocks. We all know about these things, but the more sort of lesser known ones, and one of my favourites is Adam and the Ants' first album, Dirk Wears White Socks. A much maligned and wonderful album that's not really played very much, because everyone knows Prince Charming and all that pap he did with the stuff after punk. And it's got it's a black cover with a sort of like a figure in the corner. It looks like he's been blurred. It looks like Dirk. It's a blurred figure coming across the cover. It's got a track on it called Catholic Day, which I'll put on my playlist, which is on my Facebook page for this week. If you don't get moved by Catholic Day, then I think you might be you could be dead from the neck down. Anyway, let's move on to, of course, metal. Let's have a listen. Now, metal is an interesting category, is it not? Because it has such again, like punk, it's really diverse, because there's so many subgenres, so many genres, so many eras. Heavy rock with your in rock with Deep Purple, and Rainbow, and sort of that sort of heavy stuff. Of Black Sabbath's first album, that really eerie hammer style, a Marcus Cinema sort of figure in the long grass that just stares out at you with this soulless eyes, which is really eerie, through to sort of like the and then you're moving forward and you've got the Nawabum covers, and they're really crazy, because a lot of those Nawabum covers are taken from the ethos of punk, so it's all do it yourself, right? So there's lots of where the bands have drawn them themselves, and they're awful. Wheels of Steel, Saxon's album is terrible cover, but at the same time it's also very on trend for the time, with the music itself in the package, right? Iron Maiden's first two albums, when Eddie first appears. Now they're different because they got Derek Riggs to do the art, and he's a certified bloody genius when it comes to his abilities, and so they really sort of land on their feet when they manage to get this this ongoing character. And they appear in my list because of course they're going to, right? And then you've got all the black metal genres, all the dark satanic stuff with all the the sort of people in, again, that sort of like almost a photocopy covers with the spiky armbands and the white corpse paint and the the howling at the moon poses, and then you've got things that Ozzy's Bark at the Moon and his wonderful, brilliant sort of, again, Hammer-esque kind of cover for A Diary of a Madman. You know, sort of, it's got, you know, you've got everything you want in the middle. There's so much of it and so many different things. It's hard to choose favourite covers, but there are quite a few out there. I'm going to start with my favourite, which is Judas Priest, and I shouldn't say his favourite because I've got, this is not in order. British Steel, brilliant cover. Why is it brilliant? Because it says everything in a very succinct and easy way. It's got this British Steel, which is this, you know, Sheffield Steel razor blades, right? That's what all razor blades in the past were made by Sheffield Steel. The hands holding it, almost cutting into the fingers. There are some prints where there's blood on it. There's others that aren't. In America, they had to brush out the fact that it looked like the fingers were being cut by the blade because it was putting people off. You know, it says everything it wants to about that particular album, right? And that genre, that time. British Steel, heavy sounding music. It's a heavy looking cover, and it's striking, right? And then I've got my Maiden covers. Now, interestingly, my favourite Maiden album is Peace of Mind, but my favourite Maiden art actually is Somewhere in Time, and it's because there's so much. It's my favourite Eddie, with the Cyborg Eddie, but it's also got all these. I would urge you all to go back to my show that I did last year, way back, on the art of Maiden's album covers, and I did Somewhere in Time. There's so many tiny little jokes and nods to influence and past and future, and Derek Riggs went almost mad trying to get them all in, and you can't see it on a CD. You have to get it on the vinyl or look online and get it blown up and look at the artwork. It's just a wonderful piece of work. Then I'm following it with Ace of Spades by Motorhead. Now, the reason I've got that one is because you say, why? It's a simple cover. It's just got the band dressed as, sort of spaghetti western cowboys on a sandy hill. Now, A, it's one of my favourite albums, but B, the reason I love that one so much is because when I found out years ago where they shot that photograph on a sand quarry in just outside Barnet, East Barnet, where I grew up in Barnet. I was born in Barnet, which is a suburb of London. Okay, it's actually not a suburb; it's a borough of London, and it's quite a large borough. And Barnet was like, I'm always quite proud of coming from Barnet. And when I found out that Motorhead shot that there, it just, you know, in fact, for these three loonies going to a sand pit in Barnet and photograph them, look like they're in some kind of desert. It just makes me laugh, and at that same time also it's quite iconic, isn't it? Because it's so no album, right? It's so, yeah. Then I've got Venom's Black Metal. This one really is important because it's one of the first albums where you get Welcome to Hell has the Baphomet, the goat of Mendes on the front, in the pentagram. But this one, for some reason, when it looks out at you, it really sort of holds your gaze, and it's actually quite a terrifying cover when you're a young man and don't know. You're feeling your way in the world and you're not sure whether it's the right thing to do. But looking at this, even to this day now, I look at that cover and sometimes it can give me the shivers, which is what it's all about, isn't it? And it also has that, you know, Venom, one of my favourite bands, has that DIY punk ethos in the background, and that's why the sound is as raw as the album cover. And then we're going to move on to one that's okay. This one maybe now would probably get banned. It probably would actually when I think about it, and that's Witchfinder General's Friends of Hell. The reason I love it so much is that it is a nod back to my love of Hammer movies. So it's got a churchyard as a photograph, and it's got the band dressed up as Quakers, and there's these. They're obviously clearly taking these witches to be tried or to be burnt at the stake, and their shirts are ripped open, they're very bosomy, and their breasts are hanging out, and there's a bit of blood on their shirts, and it looks like they're being dragged away. It's really quite evocative of movies like Witchfinder General, and all those sort of black. What's the Maria Bava movie? I think is it Black Monday? Yes, or one of those ones. I again, trying to get my head around that, but the Maria Bava movie, and I've got to check that out now. Let me check that out. 1 second. Going nuts. It's Black Sunday, not Black Monday. Where did I get the Monday from? Probably because I'm recording on a Monday. But that sort of intense, sort of witch movies. Those ones where like The Wicker Man, like those sort of great things that you used to watch in the late night horror movies with your dad on a Wednesday night, like I used to, even as a young boy, and it was very influential to me. So that's metal. I mean, there's so many more. I could talk about the cover for Abigail by King Diamond, the sort of fluoro blues and beautiful cartoon-driven, like painted covers. I could look at, even to some extent, I wouldn't call it metal these days, but Def Leppard's, Hysteria. It's really punchy and in your face. Guns N' Roses' first album, Appetite for Destruction, it also has a place that's sort of there that people could see and know it and go, well, that's really recognisable. Not my favourite kind of thing, but it's really recognisable. But there's so many, I can't, if I've missed anything, I'm sure that there are people out there that will say, there's the Crocus cover albums, which are quite scary. I remember being quite scared of those as a kid. Some of the really sort of some of the Satyricon covers again. That sort of, I think the most mysterious ones for me are the black metal ones and Nordic black metal ones, like bands like I said Satyricon and Dark Throne and things like that. It's a really sort of very, very unusual. And of course, if we want to move into some like the thrash stuff, some really interestingly crazy thrash covers out there now. But in the past, I mean, Kill 'Em All, Metallica's Kill 'Em All was a bit in your face, wasn't it? With the, and Masters of Puppets is another really quite stylized, shocking album cover. I Ride the Lightning. I mean, come on, which is one of my favourite thrash albums of all time. It's that perfect moment in thrash, and it is actually a really devastatingly great album because it says it all, doesn't it? The electric chair and the lightning, it says it all, doesn't need to say anything else, has it all in the one package. It's brilliant. Now, moving on to another category before we wrap up, I'm going to look at some prog albums. I know you hear you groan and you go, oh, prog, but could we talk about more metal albums? Well, we can, but let's have a look at some prog albums. This one's pretty straightforward because there's a handful that are brilliant. I mean, they're all brilliant, but there's a handful that I love and adore. Again, this isn't in order. We've got Brain Salad Surgery by ELP. That's the brilliant gatefold cover of the Alien concept by H.R. Geiger or Giger. It's mind-bogglingly brilliant for an album that is very difficult to navigate. It's very difficult to that's the right word. It's very intense, an album. You can't always finish it in one sitting, but the album cover sort of shows that. Really, it's quite an interesting and very, very, very intellectual album. And then I've got The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Well, to me, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway cover is, it's a photograph. It's a story of Rael, and you can see him and you see him leaving the picture frame, that last picture in the cover, and it's sort of photo montage. It sort of says to me underground New York cinema. It feels Warhol-y. It has this sort of Oldenburg pop art, feel to it. It just feels like it's made in a big warehouse somewhere full of people beautiful people making beautiful art in, about to head off to Studio 52 and take a load of acid. It has that feel to it, and to be honest, so does the album. If you're honest about it, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. I'm not shy about saying that. And it has this sort of, the whole album has that sort of Warhol, Walden pop art sort of feel, and it has the feel that that it could be. I mean, we knew he was writing a script at the time, wasn't he, Gabriel, for what's his name, that directed Friedkin, that directed the Exorcist. So it didn't ever come about, but he was writing one. So there's that cinematic feel that you get from prog, and that is one of my favourite covers. And then of course you have Beryllium, and people might say, oh, is it going to be Misplaced Childhood? Would it be Fugazi like you mentioned last week? Actually, it's Script for a Jester's Tear, the first one, purely on 2 counts. Firstly, because it's the first album I ever heard of theirs, and it makes me feel like I'm 10 again, 12 again. Secondly, it has this layering that is sort of... Sorry, my mic is making a funny noise. It's got this layering that sort of feels like it's like several paintings in one. You've got this really textured background, the bed sit and the sadness, and you can almost smell the dampness and the wood and the coldness of the place, and then the sadness, and then you've got this jester that is Marillion's early imagery of the fish adopted, because that's him. He's a joker, but a sad man, right? The comedian that's the eternal sad man, right? Supposedly. So, but it almost looks like that when Mark Wilkerson made the album cover, he sort of superimposed the jester in and on top, because it's almost ethereal. It doesn't have the thickness. It's not a solid. It's airbrushed, right, like all of his work is, but it has this sort of thin layeredness to it, like it's almost spectral. He does that as well with Misplaced Childhood, and he does it again in Clutching at Straws and in Fugazi. They almost feel, although Fugazi's main character feels a bit more solid, but they do feel that there's this etherealness to them, and it's gatefold, and it's got lots of little bits you can look at, and it's just it reflects what the album is completely. It reflects that sort of fudgy thickness that the album is, the slowness of some parts like The Web and Chelsea Monday, but also it has this sort of sort of aggression and sort of depth of anger that's in Forgotten Sons and in the title track. So it's one of my favorite album covers. In fact, probably one of the best prog album covers of them all. And then of course, I'm going to say that actually, now people might say that Roger Dean, who does all of the Yes covers and quite a few prog album covers, around the world, Gentle Giant and all this sort of stuff. I'm going to tell you now that my favourite one, you're going to say, is it going to be Close to the Edge? Is it going to be Tales from Topographic Ocean? No, it's actually the Yes album that was not a Yes album, the one that got away. That's Anderson, Buford, Wakeman and Howe, when they couldn't be called Yes. And it's these lovely sort of Roger Dean-esque islands in the sky, mountains, with this lovely black border. It's very alien-esque, it's very Yes, it's very futuristic and very covering of what Yes or Anderson, Buford, Wakeman and Howe were. And it has on it the album, one of my favourite songs ever, called Brother of Mine, and when I listen to that I always think of my brother Ronald, and I miss him, and I haven't seen him for like 30 plus years, 40 plus years, and so I feel that to me, it makes me feel of him, and I always think of him when that comes on. And I picked it out of a bargain bin in a, would you believe it, in a cassette bargain bin for £1 in a convenience store at the top of my road. And at that time I was trying to date the lady behind the girl behind the counter. We did actually go on a few dates. Didn't work out that well, but it was okay. It was a nice time. We had a good time. We had a few gigs together. But yeah, £1. Would you believe? Bargain, absolute bargain. And then I'm going to finish with one of my honourable mentions, and that's Vigil in the Wilderness of Mirrors, Fish's first album. Another Mark Wilkinson cover. Mark Wilkinson went on to do a couple of Iron Maiden covers, quite a few Iron Maiden covers latterly, and Judas Priest, but mainly with Fish's first major Fish's albums, and a lot of the early Marillion albums up until the Steve Hogarth era. I mean, Fish left in 1990, because they went on a different route. They chose to change the sound and their image. But the Vigil in the Wilderness of Mirrors is a gatefold again. It's got Vigil and what could be his girlfriend / love or wife, I don't know, on this big mountain of TVs, because it's part of the song Voyeur, like looking. Fish was very into, at that particular time, retrospectively looking at his life back and forward, like the songs View to the Hill, there's A Company, they're all very much about him and himself, and always has been centered around him. He's, as a vocalist, as a songwriter, he's always been a bit self-centered, but that's fine. That's where he gets his lyrical guidance from and his influence. But this particular cover, again, it's a beautiful piece of art. Again, when I was talking about the Jester being quite ethereal and thin and dropped in, overlaid on the top for a spectral. Vigil on this one is not. He's solid. He's windswept. He's almost Roger Dean-esque depth and thickness of colour. Again, it's just a beautiful piece of art, and I remember buying it when it first came out, because I went straight into the Fish camp, and I do love the first two Hogarth albums. I do love Season's End and Holidays in Eden, but outside of that, I don't go down the Hogarth era. Even Brave, which is one of the best concept albums of the last 25 years, but not for me really. I like it, but it's a bit too. It's a bit too. I just say this without offending people. It's a bit too Pink Floyd-y for me. Anyway, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean the sound. It's a bit sort of. It's quite stark and angular, and I like my Marillion to be a bit more flouncy and keyboardy around. And I might be wrong. There are Marillion fans listening to me going, no, it is, but it's how I view it, and it's my view, right? Anyway, they're my picks. They're not, again, as I said, lots of things could. And if I want to talk about honourable mentions for prog, tough one. Yeah, I'd say if you're going to push it, Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick, because it's a newspaper, which is fun. Again, go back to my episode where I talk about Thick as a Brick. You might enjoy that one. Maybe Peter Gabriel's Gabriel 1 and Gabriel 2. In fact, all the Gabriel albums, but they're not really proggy. I wouldn't call Gabriel prog once he left Genesis, but also one of the, if you want to looking for a real album that says, hey, this is the 90s, I think probably Gabriel's So, with him as a black and white photograph, angularly stuck on an angle into a white background, probably says everything you want to hear about the 80s in one album cover, probably, really. There are obviously mentions that maybe Duran Duran albums, there's Beatles albums. I don't want to go into those because they've been covered ad nauseum. This is the stuff that, just as I said, I sat down and...
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do make everything about me.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
My passport is in the pocket of the duffel bag I took to Mexico.
At Mattress Firm, we know the right mattress matters. We also know that price does too. So if you see a lower price somewhere else, we'll match it. Plus, you get free and fast delivery. Shop in-store or online at mattressfirm.com. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
A new year is full of surprises, but one thing is always predictable. Postage costs go up. Stamps.com gives you crazy discounts of up to 89% off USPS and UPS services. So when postage goes up, your business will barely notice the change. Stamps.com is like your own personal post office, wherever you are. You can even take care of orders on the go with the mobile app. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. Schedule package pickups, automatically find the cheapest and fastest shipping options, and seamlessly connect with every major marketplace and shopping cart. There's even a supply store where you can stock up on mailing supplies, labels, even printers. Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses just like yours. All you need is a computer or phone and printer. Take a chunk out of your mailing and shipping costs this year with Stamps.com. Sign up with promo code PROGRAM for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com code PROGRAM.
In 5 minutes, this is what hit me. Anyway, I rambled on. It's gone on for an hour. Thanks for sticking with me. I'd love to know what your album choices are and why you chose them. Just come to there's a link in the show notes. Just come and leave a message and give me a top 5 and do what I did. Don't spend too long. Really just snap at it quickly and see what happens. It's the best way of doing it because it gets you the stuff that's in the front of your mind. If you think too difficult at it, you're never going to get it done. Anyway, that's for me this week. That's all for me this week. Be safe, be happy, and talk to you soon. Bye for now.